Welcome back to our overview of FF&EZ-Design. In the previous segments we covered the general user interface, the general resource list such as clients and vendors, and the project resource list that maintain the where and what that make up a project. Now we'll take a look at how all of this comes together in the FF&E Worksheet. The FF&E Worksheet is a little different from other screens, primarily because it has a very simple data content. Although we obviously can see a lot of data here, the only thing you enter or change on the worksheet is the answer to that question: what goes where and how much. Each row in the data list represents an occurrence or usage of an object in a room, and the only data that really exists in the worksheet itself is in the room ID and finish location columns, the object column, and the quantity itself. Everything else is being pulled from the other resource screens that we showed earlier, meaning that if you change the resources, the changes will appear on the worksheet automatically. Conversely, this also means that changing something in the worksheet means changing the quantity used, the location of the usage, or deleting that usage of the object, and that's all. Since this screen is where you tell the system where objects are used, it is also the screen where you will find all the reports used to communicate this to clients, vendors, purchasing managers, or contractors. As you can see, the reports list on the FF&E Worksheet is quite extensive. The sorting and querying capabilities also become very useful on this screen, because not only can you arrange your project FF&E by location, but you can instantly see all the rooms where an object is used and all of the items from a single vendor. Let's create a new project by moving to the project list screen and clicking on Add. I'll enter some basic information to get started. I'll leave the billing type as is, but if you are a purchasing management firm or a firm just doing turnkey design, you'll want to use one of the other two options. I will enter some sample rates for markup, tax, and estimated freight. Finally, I'll enter a shipping address. Now let's save it, and now that it exists, we can open it. In the last segments, we introduced the editing screens for the various pieces of a project. Although you can create a project by going to each of these individual screens and adding or editing the information there is a more efficient process that integrates all of them as part of using the FF&E Worksheet. For our example, let's assume this is a high-rise hotel with a top floor of suites. The design calls for an observation lounge off of the elevator lobby, so let's begin building the list of what is needed for this space. Now that list may come from an architectural drawing set, or it may come from an architectural program, but the idea is that we want to first make sure that we have the functional set of objects that are required for the design. We can do this before anybody selects any type of product. Let's create a seating group of 2 club chairs, a sofa, and 2 lamp tables. For this exercise, we'll assume the seating pieces all use the same fabric. To start with a simple example, we'll do the lamp table. I'll click on the Add command. Now what we're adding is a usage, not the object yet. That'll bring up the usage editor and a little note to remind you that in order to begin placing objects, you've got to have rooms to put them in. So our first task is to create a new room. We'll do this by clicking on the Create New Room button. That'll bring up the room list screen in Add mode. Each room needs to be assigned to a major area, so I can create an area now by selecting the New button next to the Area field. And that will bring up the Area screen, also in Add mode. So I'm going to add a major area, and I'm going to call it just Guest Rooms. You have to pick a sub-project, but there's always going to be one there already, and then I'll save that area. This will bring me back to the room list with that area ID already selected. For a room ID, I'm going to use OL and the name Observation Lounge. There's only going to be one of them, so we'll leave the 1 for the prototype or room count. The phase is 1, and we'll put in a budget of $80,000. Then I'll save the room, and now we're back at the usage editor with these two things we've added already there. Now, of course, I don't have an object to pick yet, so the next thing would be to actually create the table object. That, of course, brings up the object list in add mode, and by now you should be familiar with it from the earlier segments. I'll use case, but we could use something more descriptive like TBL as a prefix. Prefixes are kind of up to you, and they should just make some logical sense. It would be case 01, class is furnishings. Description will be table lamp at OL, and the unit of measure is each. And of course, down below it has created a placeholder spec for us. So all I have to do now is to save the object, and now I have it to pick from our pick list. There are going to be two of these tables at each end of the couch, so I will put in 2 for our quantity. Then I can just save it. And now the new table is in the room. So we've got area ID guest rooms, and it's in the room ID OL. Here's the object tag, and of course there is the quantity. Since that was a lamp table, let's add a lamp to go on it. Let's click on add to add a new occurrence for the room. And of course we still can't pick a lamp because we don't have one yet. This is fairly typical of early in a project before you've built up a list of project objects to pick from. So we'll create a new object, and I'll use a tag of light 01. It'll be furnishings, although conceivably lighting could be equipment also. The description would be lamp, comma, table. Now I'm using a general to specific order here because if you use a very generic tag scheme like light or case, putting the most definitive term first helps you sort the descriptions by that item. So all the lamps would be together and all the tables would be together in the case section. You can do it any way you want, but getting the most out of your data sorting, it really works in your favor. The lamp would have an each for the unit, and now we've got our placeholder already created for us, so we'll just save that. And again, this is going to have 2. This time, instead of clicking on save, we're going to get going with this data creation, and we're going to do save with auto add. When I do, it's going to save the lamp in the room, and then it's going to go right back into add mode. And then you notice on the right side we're starting to build up a list of what's in this room so far. That way we can keep track of what we've done and what we haven't. If you click on items on this list, you'll see this highlight move back and forth to show that it's already in the room, so you don't have to add it again. Now let's do something a little bit more complicated, the sofa and the chairs. There are 2 things to note about these. First, 2 products are used to create these objects, and they share the same fabric selection. Let's complicate it a little more by assuming that I already have a sofa and chair in mind that I used in a previous project. Let's get started. I select Create New Object and enter the tag I want and a generic description. I'm going to use UPH for upholstery or upholstered objects. Make this one 01, furnishings, and then we'll make this the sofa. And as I mentioned, I already know that there's a sofa out there that I want to use. So instead of using the placeholder, I'm going to attach an existing spec as the primary component. Now normally you would pick from a list of specs, but all we have so far is our casework and our one light. So we actually need to add a spec to this list so I can pick it. So I'm going to click on New, and now I'm in the spec list in add mode, and I want to import that sofa. So I click on Import. I'll narrow down my list to sofas, and there's the one I want. Notice it already has a picture attached to it. I'll let it bring in the pricing, although that might change later. We'll keep the current value for the spec ID at UPH01 since that's what I had already entered, and then I'll select this, and now we have the sofa pulled into the project. All I need to do now is save it. And now it has been pre-selected. We're back at the object screen, and now I need to add the a placeholder for the fabric. We'll call this fabric fab-01, and we'll call it fabric at lounge seating. Unit of measure would be yards. And while I was looking at that sofa, I noticed that it needed 18.5 yards. So I know that information beforehand. Don't know what the vendor is going to be, but I do know that it needs 18.5 yards of fabric. So now I've got that entered, and I'll save that. Now the sofa is on the object pick list. How many are there? There are 1. So I'm fine with that. If I wound up with 2 sitting groups like this in the lounge area, maybe at one end or the other, I would enter 2 here, and I would also raise the number of table lamps and lamp tables to 4 instead, but we'll stick with 1 for now. So I'll save that, and again, because I've got auto add on, and that is signified by this red auto add check mark, I'm still in add mode, but the sofa has now appeared in the room. Now let's do the 2 lounge chairs. We'll tag this as UPH02. It's also furnishings, and its description will be chair lounge. And then we've got a placeholder, but of course I mentioned that I already know about a chair I want to use, so we'll attach its existing spec, but we need to create it like before. And we'll import that just like we did the sofa. This time I've got a lot of chairs out there, so I'm going to use a type that says, or a lot of specs, so I'll use a type of chair, and we'll use a price range of $300 to $700. And now I've got 3, and there's my chair. So I'll select that, brings in the chair, save it. Okay, so we've got our chair pulled in. Now we need the fabric. Now if you remember, the fabric is the same as it was on the sofa. Let's go down and use the existing spec. Then there it is. It's already been found for us. So all I need to do now is tell it what quantity is used. Well, I didn't notice what the quantity was used. I'll have to look that up later. So I'll just click on Save, say it's okay, that I left it at 0. And now we've got the lounge chair object. So there are going to be 2 of those. So I'm going to enter 2 and then save it, and we're back on our worksheet. Now you see that we've built up the list of items in the room, and if I click on something with 2 specs, you'll see it down below in the FF&E summary. Let's add one more thing. Add a carpeting, since we know we're going to need some there, so we can see how finish works also. So I'm going to put a tag of floor 1. Class will be finish, and we'll call this carpet. Unit of measure will be square feet, and we've got a placeholder set up for it, but we're going to add padding to this so that it keeps up with the padding, the carpet pad for us too. So we're going to create another placeholder spec called floor-pad-01. It will be carpet pad. Unit of measure will be the same. The quantity used in object is 1. Basically what an object of finish usually works out to be is that it's going to be 1 measure of whatever that unit of measure is. So every square foot of carpet is going to be the carpet object. So therefore every square foot of carpet pad is what we need to go with it. So we put in a 1, and then we save it. And let's say we've found that we need 600 square feet, and I've got to put the location in, since this is a finish, and the finish would be the floor. So now we'll save that, and now you've got the finish up here listed at the top, and at the bottom, as we expect, the system is tracking the carpet and carpet pad products. In our next segment, we'll look at some more powerful ways of adding rooms and their contents to a project.